welcome to the third question time that Turf Business has hosted, and this is the start of our 2022 Turf Business Summit series of events. And the idea behind this is that we start the discussions going about what should be on the agenda at the summit, which is going to be Barcelona and PGA Catalunya in November. An amazing venue, somewhere that we're very privileged to be able to use for this event. And thank you to Lee Marshall for helping us out with that. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Lee. And thank you to the rest of our panel who we've got, which I'm sure you all know anyway, but I'll introduce. Jim Battar from the RFU, Dougie Robertson, who's with West Ham United, Lee Marshall who looks after Eton's grounds here, and Lee Sayers, who looks after the London Golf Club. So a varied panel and a varied audience that's all been handpicked and invited personally. And we'll go to our first question, I think, which is from Ben Connell from Ipswich Town.
With recruitment within our industry, how do we go about recruiting new blood and also retaining existing staff?
Dougie, do you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, I'll start. It's funny, Ben. I spoke with Scott Tingley several weeks ago. Similar question, similar discussion, and I think everyone's struggling. Spoke with Andy, again a couple of months ago about recruitment. How do we find people? Why are staff disappearing? Why are you getting no applicants coming in for the jobs? It's a multitude of questions. I don't believe there's an answer on it right now. I think it's a big concern. I don't believe it's anyone's direct fault. I do question when you're getting all these golf courses, for example, that are closing because of housing development, etc. Where do those greenkeepers go? Because they just seem to disappear into normal society. You go from COVID. People have said about Brexit. It's just an excuse after excuse with no answer. So how do we fix the problem? I can't give you it. And the conversation with Scott was, we advertise for a position, we put it on social media. Do we need to start retweeting, remessaging, just to almost push their job, in the expectation that they'll push ours going forward? Because somebody in Liverpool, for example, if I retweeted their job advert, it's not going to affect anything at West Ham United because of the travelling distance and the fact the cost to come and live in the southeast. So do us as professionals and individuals need to try and help each other more?
Lee, is that something that's similar for your sector?
Yeah, it's been difficult. We've almost got to a stage where we accept now that we actually take people that aren't trained in the industry. We call them trainee assistants. We get them through their level 2. It is difficult because they come to us with no experience, and that takes a lot of the supervisor's time. But we've probably got a very robust sort of internal training program. I'd like to think pretty good standard operating procedures, and through that we tend to bring people on. There's always some casualties. I've just lost one just recently who came from an office-based industry. He wanted to try something different, didn't work out. But I've got probably 6 or 7 over the last 3 years that are just been great, and they were complete gambles. One was from Tesco's, one was from recruitment, never worked outside. I've just gone on character and what they said, and in the hope that we can sort of cajole them into what we want. So it's really hard because, as you'll all appreciate, that first season, they're only worth so much because they just can't do half the jobs. So it's frustrating, and I've had a few frustrated supervisors have come to me and are pulling their hair out because they're finding it not what they got into, babysitting, really. And they're not all young people. That's probably the biggest thing I would say. I've actually taken on quite a few 40-year-olds who have been in other industries. Quite a few from the hospitality industry have come to me and I cannot do that anymore. They're just fed up and they want something that's what they feel is sort of a bit more fulfilling. And that has worked, but yeah, it is difficult. It's a lot of my time interviewing, lots of phone interviews, lots of time.
Jim? I mean, your role is not just looking after Twickenham. You reach out to local clubs as well, I believe. Rugby, is it having the same problem as other sectors?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's an industry problem. It's not a sport problem. Interestingly, I've kind of gone through a different route, which is with the advertising and things like that. You're casting a wide net, but I had a very frank conversation with my manager and just said we're going to have to pay above market value. I gave him the reasons why. I said this is what we're looking at. If there's obviously a massive hole essentially that's appearing now in terms of trying to get people to come in. So this is what we're going to have to pay. And I literally gave him a percentage marker above market value, essentially what we'd have to pay. And I didn't advertise. And I think this is where we're going to end up going. I picked the phone up and I did my own head hunting. I went poaching. And to a certain degree, that's where we're going to end up having to go. There's none of this advertising, because if there's nobody there that's wanting to come, then you're going to have to go find somebody that's in the same sector and pay them more to come. So again, there's different kind of approaches, as it were, but you go for the most effective. I mean, for me, I didn't have the time. So circumstances at my place made that I had to do something very quickly. So I had to be very proactive. I actioned it. Literally within probably 2 weeks, I'd gone from having a situation that was of nobody's doing to be able to make a conversation and having a meeting with my manager to be able to actively go and reach out to this person and essentially say, do you want to come and work?
And did it work?
Yeah, he started on Monday.
Okay, cool. Lee, is it the same in your sector? I suspect it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've taken punts and, trying to take on people with no experience, and to be fair, that's worked. One of which has left us and gone to work in football, which is what he wanted to do from the start, and moved up to Wigan and gone there. So at the moment, to be fair, it's just trying to get people to fill in an application form and apply. It's an expensive area, so your pool's already limited. If you're trying to attract people, then you need to be paying what's expected. And I agree with Jim. I think we're at a position where employees can dictate what they want, and employers have either got to pay it or you have to suffer and struggle on. And Doug is right, there isn't a magic wand, there's no answer for it. And it's a shame if we're at that point where we've got to go headhunting, or it doesn't help the situation, it just helps us. But I think that's where we are as an industry. And as a school, we've got a lot to offer. We're not just in terms of sports turf. We're golf, cricket, winter sports.
Are you selling now?
I'm selling now. I'm going for it. Why not? I've got 4 jobs. But we've got a lot. We have got lots of. We're not just rugby. We're not just. So, from my point of view, starting is a great place to come and start in a school, and then you can choose what you want to go in before you do golf. We want people to progress. We want people to move on. That doesn't solve our problem now in terms of recruiting.
Lee, can I just butt in there a minute? Maybe the industry needs to go through this dip and to almost force wages up, because how many years have we been talking about the industry isn't paid enough, blah, blah, blah. Now perhaps we need to go through this crisis to be able to force those wages up, and then we'll start a whole new flow of new people coming into the industry, because they'll be coming into a better paid industry rather than something that's overworked and underpaid.
I would echo that and agree with that. But we're asking for more pay, and so is everyone else. So in all our institutions, what we're all working with, whether football clubs, golf, you've got the ground staff asking for more pay, you've got the cleaners asking for more pay. So it's just that vicious circle, isn't it? The question should be, what is the expectation that a grounds person should be on? Where is that line? Because we always try and compare it to working in Tesco's or being a cleaner, or where is that line of where we put ourselves to where it should be? I think because no one can really answer that question either. We all think we should be on X, but in a national framework of jobs, where is it that our industry sits? And our expectation is always going to be higher because we work in that bubble. So I think it's that chicken and egg scenario. You're never going to get the answer you want, but you've got to make sure we only worry about our departments, but it's got to fit in with the structure of your organisation you're in.
It's funny you say that, Lee, because you take whatever our cost for a term in here, so ultimately it's a business that's making money. You go from Premier League with grounds that are full capacity, and then you start dropping down the leagues. So there's not the same level of money from golf to, you're about to have the Open at St Andrews, against an 18-hole municipal course. They're just not the same money. So to try and find a standard to benchmark on, I think is very difficult. Yes, we need a guide to work from and try and get to, but I think it's incredibly difficult with the amount of variations.
I think as well, though, I think Ben's bang on the money. I think to a degree, it has got a break, because at the moment we've tried to fix this, put that back on, stick a sticky plaster over that, and we've just limped our way through the last 10, 15 years with no clear strategy as a whole. Like Dougie said earlier, there's no fault with this. It's a very natural progression that's just happened. And I suppose nothing has happened because nobody's got the answers. So like I say, I think there's just going to be a very natural adaptation with trying to develop a pathway. Where do people start? It's like we've always had this talk about trying to get into schools so we can start actually showcasing that there is an industry, there is a career to come into. But there's no point showcasing that career if it's not of value. There's no point in coming into that's going to give you a career that basically you're going to work exceptionally hard for, you're going to do long hours, you're going to probably not get paid as much as you think you're going to get paid, and physically you're going to be pretty broken at 50. That is the nature of the job. You can't get away from that fact. Why would somebody at 15, 16 think that doing this is going to be a good thing to do when you can go and train to be an engineer and you can go and earn 2, 3, 4 times as much because there's value in it and there's a massive shortage of? That's what the engineering industry's had to do. They've gone through that process. I think to a degree, we've got to do the same. We're just going to have to wait for it to burn down and we'll build back from the ashes. And if that means everybody's got to adapt in the meantime, with the headhunting, poaching, with their own ways and means of just limping through, I think people are trying to find answers that are just simply not there. I think we've just got to accept the facts that we're going to crash and burn, and it's in slow motion, it is happening, it is coming. I think we can all accept that, and just wait for that all to go horribly wrong. And then employers have no choice but to pay the money for people to come in. Otherwise, the job doesn't get done. So I think we've got to accept that something's got to get really, really bad first, a bit like the government, before we kind of step back up again and start rebuilding.
Anyone on the panel here, do we not think that this is a countrywide problem, a business-wide problem, not just in our sector, and we all hear about the hospitality sector? Do you not think it's something that everybody's facing in terms of
I think
getting
it's proven
staff?
with the BA I've just announced today that there's another 10,000 flights, I think, being cancelled. And then somebody else has worked out the percentages of what they've already done. Yeah, so it is a countrywide problem. I don't think anyone in here is qualified enough to give a reason why, or you've got to be so politically correct in how you answer now as to why the problems are.
Or don't care the answer you give.
Yeah.
I think from a land-based sector perspective, I think there is a huge problem, right? The thing is, though, there's no point just saying, well, it's the same everywhere. The bottom line is that we're going to start competing with all these sectors again to try and get the recruitment. So we need to be ahead of the curve. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same position in 10 years' time where the likes of ag, the likes of horticulture, they would have already made their changes. Yep. And they would have already started offering better packages and better value and salaries and better conditions for those to come in. And they'll go to that'll be their career. That'll be the industry they go into, not into sports turf. Now, and that's the thing we need to start looking at now, is the fact is that it's fine to say, yeah, we're all in the same boat, but the bottom line is we need to be ahead of the game, otherwise we're going to be in the same position in 4 or 5 years' time where we still can't recruit because they're going elsewhere, because everybody else has changed and we haven't. So it's an interesting one. I don't think it's something that's going to be kind of you're not flipping a switch on this one.
Gary Barwell from Edgbaston can't be here today, but he asked me to raise the point, is it not money alone? Is it about making sure that the industry comes together to firstly promote how good the jobs are, which he obviously feels it is, perhaps some of you don't, and also plus understand why people leave in terms of keeping people in their jobs. Anybody want to come in with that one?
Money talks.
Yeah.
The definitive instance, though, everybody looks, it's a salary. So the salary is benchmark what you're going to look at, because that's what you need to live. The package, where you start talking about conditions, pensions, healthcare, all the rest of it, that should be there as well. your point of negotiation is always going to be on that salary. So it doesn't matter what anybody says. If that salary is not paying enough, you go do something else, or you stay where you are. And that doesn't matter where you are. You're still talking about what you need from money to spend, essentially. And I think it's so easy just to kind of skirt saying that's not always. Oh, don't get me wrong. Not everybody's completely focused on money. I get that. Sometimes it is based about where I'm going to work, the prestige, and all the rest of it. But if you really start to push somebody really, really hard and said, right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, I think everybody would agree that it's still going to come down to money.
Lee.
It's a big part of it, Jim, definitely. I work at a club where we aren't market leaders in the best pay. And the way we try to sort of mitigate that is by being really good with development. I've been there 3 times now, and over the last 20 odd years, there's been a lot of people come and go quickly. We've got a bit of a reputation for that, which is a shame. We've lost some really good people, but they've gone on to bigger and better things, which is, which is good for the industry. So, yeah, we're really good at development, and that I interview a lot of people and say, if you stick with us 2 or 3 years, you will come out of us and get a deputy's job or a first assistant's job at other places, and that happens all the time. It's a shame. It's a really nice thing for me at my age, in my early 50s, thinking these guys are going on. It's a shame for the business because they are just getting really good guys. But yeah, development, we've got one guy going to the New Zealand to Carry Cliffs this winter, another one going to Royal Sydney, one's helping out at in Dubai in November. So they're all things that we can organise, and they love that. And they know a lot of them are young and up and coming people. So that's something we're good at. But
Just hope they come back.
well, some do. This is my 3rd time back. I started as an assistant in '94, so I've done it twice. I've left and run places and come back. So it can work. But there is the other one. We get a few people, you probably all do, of either their partners earn good wages and they've had a pressurised job where they've earned good money. I've got quite a few in their 40s and 50s that have actually done really well and got good pensions and are now sort of, they can't come to us and step down, but they can come to us, and because it's not going to be easy, you're not going to come and get a rest with us, but you will do something that's outside, particularly if they've got a love of golf. So we've attracted a few people that way as well.
Okay. We spoke about money. We spoke about it's not just about money. If I can throw it over to Jim Croxton now. Where's Jim sitting? I think you've got a question around job satisfaction.
I have. This is a really important question for us at Bigger. We have a business intention, a strategic aim to try and improve the happiness and well-being of our members over a period of time. The key question is, how do we measure that? What benchmarking do we put in place around greenkeepers and sports turf operatives' happiness currently? How do you measure that? How do we go about finding out people's job satisfaction across the industry right now?
Anybody got a thought on that?
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible to gauge right now because the industry, I feel, is at an all-time low because of how difficult it is to try and employ people, keeping employees happy. So it's not, I think you need to do it on a sliding scale, from your head greenkeepers and down, and then try and gauge what position that person's happy in. Because we were chatting earlier, you get people that walk in the morning now, they're almost looking at their watch when they start, what time is it we can go home? You'll get others that, they're quite happy, gets to home time and they're still pottering on doing something. So are they getting more satisfaction just in being there? Or is it because they want to be there?
Actually, I think, Sinead, can we go to the poll that we've got on that, in terms of, I say poll, it's a word wall, and that might give us a few more ideas. So if you can go to your poll section on your app, please. Now, this is what's called a word wall. So you just put 1 or 2 words in that basically are your ideas of how you could measure that. And then the one that gets the most comes up as the biggest. And I think that might be useful for you, Jim, in terms of gauging what this room feels. see it on there. If you put what you want in.
Yeah.
You can take part in that on your phones if you wanted to. You could see that. You can't vote again.
Okay.
But you can see what's going on there, guys, if you want to look at that. Okay. So, appreciation, trust, communication, staff retention. I think the question was about how do you measure those, yeah? So, who put communication down? Anybody going to volunteer themselves? Okay, can we... You just want to expand on that a bit, yeah?
I think that communicating across the board, you can not only speak to one person, but you can speak to everybody and perhaps get like just to see how everybody's feeling, and it's just the easiest way to measure it. And then you can act upon that.
Okay. Any thoughts from the panel there?
Well, we were just just a brief discussion then. I think as metrics is very difficult to measure.
Yeah.
I don't think you could go and actually say, again, you're working with the law of averages. So I think the bottom line is that you're going to be, for instance, an apprentice who's absolute keen as mustard is going to have a completely different opinion to somebody who's been in it 30 years and has been doing the same role. The likelihood is they're going to have very differences of opinion in terms of what they see as whether it's something that they value or not. Job satisfaction, I think, can mean a lot of different things for different people, depending on what you're working on at that time as well. So you might be writing a report, for instance, to try and get some capital expenditure, to get something signed off and all the rest of it. And if you deliver that and you do the presentation and everything, you get signed off, you think, bang, nailed it. For me, that would be job satisfaction. But then for somebody else, that might be absolute crap. It doesn't bring them any satisfaction at all to do that. So I kind of think I think because of the wide-ranging roles and within it, and it's certainly different venues as well, I would find it really difficult to try and pinpoint a set of data that would be able to give you a solid result. I'm not sure. I think individually, I think you'd be looking at doing like surveys. Even if I do quite informal discussions with my staff. I mean, I literally just on a Monday morning, we're doing bits of work, and then every now and again I can and I think you've got to be focused on the team as well. You need to get that understanding that if they're having a crap day, we'll have a discussion, find out why it's crap. Is it something work-related? Is it something outside of work? Interestingly now with our work, we were talking about it earlier, is that you've got colleagues that you work with, and 9 times out of 10, because you spend a lot of time with them, it actually you get familiarised with their personal life as well. You become more than colleagues, you become friends, you become brothers and all the rest of it. You kind of get quite neat and tight into that. And if you can help and influence that in any way to be able to help them feel better, and then if they feel better, the likelihood is their performance is going to be better, they're going to work harder. So it's in your best interest as a manager to do that. I think you need to have that interaction with them, your staff, regular, and actually just help them through that. I mean, I've had no end of different situations where I've had to help personally intervene and try and help somebody out of certain situations. Once they're happy that there's a solution and you've solved that, then they're probably just as likely to start stepping back in and they start working as well as you'd expect them to.
I think as well, when you're in sports turf, because you're spending hours divoting a pitch after a game, you're a lot closer working away, whereas potentially, golf, size of Eurostate, it's quite often lone working rather than being together as a team.
I agree with Jim, definitely. I find there's a lot of time, any time that I do spend, it's time away from things that need doing, but it's the best time I spend with the guys. It's just, I try to work as much as I can. One I try and do is if they're going on holiday, I'll always try to do a little bit of a debrief, literally no words to it, nothing written down, just catch them and enjoy your holiday, and it's just a bit of a release. I know what I'm like, I'm away for a week. As I drive out the drive, I can feel the layers just peeling off me, and I feel a bit of relief from sort of getting away, and I feel the same with the crew, so I try to, that's just one that I find that works for me.
Okay. Jim, I'm not sure if that actually answered the question you posed, which was how measure it, but is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. We've just done a pretty big survey at Bigger. We had nearly 1,400 respondents, which is pretty representative across our industry, across the whole scale of greenkeeping. We actually asked a really simple question: are you happy in your role? 56% were happy, varying from happy to very happy. A further 24% were meh. I think they're okay, which leaves about 20% that aren't. But fairly startling, nearly 40% of greenkeepers are currently looking for work outside the industry. Now, I think personally that represents a significant challenge to our particular sector, and gives us the hard data to go to the rest of our sport and potentially the rest of the wider industry to say, this is no longer a greenkeeping problem, this is a golf problem, this is no longer a groundsmanship problem, it's a football, cricket, horse racing, rugby, tennis problem. And we can only solve these things by working together. So I think that's a key part of it. But I still want to hear more from our members and from our wider industry on ways and means we can really drill into that kind of happiness and satisfaction. Because whilst I agree, Jim, that money does talk, in terms of job retention, I think there are a whole bunch of other factors that keep people into the role, and that can be development, it can be appreciation, respect. Big challenge, as Lee will know, in golf right now, that immediate feedback from golfers, which can be generally the negative stuff is the stuff that comes back quickest, all that kind of thing. So I think there's some work for us as a wider industry to do to really try and keep our tabs on happiness, job satisfaction, so that we can properly track it. In the same way you track the happiness and satisfaction of your turf, we've got to do it with our people.
Okay. Just on your question, sorry, Jim, do you think you can, so was it 20% you said are unhappy? On that 20%, if you found out what was making them unhappy, do you think you could turn them back into being happy, or have they got to the point that they just need to leave the industry, as what some of them have said, and then we need to find the fresh people to come back in? Because once you've got somebody unhappy within the team, very quickly they start to spread their unhappiness through the rest of the team. So you're an individual situation. So if you've got a team of 10 people and you've got one person that's starting to pull everyone else down, is it easier to get rid of that person, to keep the rest of the team happy?
At the risk of monopolising your excellent session, Martin, that's the next phase, to really drill into this data much further and respond back to it. We're certainly looking to try and, for example, recommend exit interviews. We do it. Someone leaves the association, they don't renew, we find out why, and we find out whether they've left the trade or whether they've just left us as a membership organisation. Anecdotally, from looking at the data, the rough data that we've got now, rather than finding that 1 in 5 greenkeepers at a club is unhappy, we're probably finding that the staff team at 1 in 5 clubs is unhappy. So, if Lee's got 20 guys at London Club, I'm not telling them they've got to go back and find that 4 are unhappy. They're either all unhappy because they're being treated really poorly by their employers, or actually they're okay. Yeah. And that's generally the response. Of course, we've got individuals that are struggling.
Could I just ask one more question on that? In terms of that 20%, is there an age bracket within that? Or is it, you don't know, it's just, because it'd be just interesting to know, is it the younger generation unhappy, or is it the middle, or is it the older? Just because if it's the younger ones, then we really are going to struggle, because if they want to come out of the industry, they're our next, first assistants, greenkeepers, deputies, head groundsmen, etc. And if they're the ones that are really struggling, then we're already struggling to recruit. Then if that's the next phase that are coming out, then wow, we really are going to be in a storm.
I don't think I've ever run a survey where the key conclusion at the end of it isn't that we need another survey. So, that's the next stage. And I think we've already talked about talking to people, communication. I think we've got to do more of this. And I really like the technology we're doing today. We can get that really instant response when we get people together.